live.
Hello, Realtors. Thank you for joining us today for our discussion on authentic leadership for maximum impact. This session will be recorded today and archived on the SCR YouTube channel at youtube.com/screaltors. While you're there, please subscribe so that you can stay up to date on all the latest informational videos from your state association. Today, I'm so pleased to have a friend, a mentor, a true leader of our Realtor Association, Ron Phipps. Ron was the 2011 president of the National Association of Realtors and has been a realtor for over 42 years. Ron, you must have started when you were 8 years old.
I was young, which was good. That was distant memory, Nick.
He remains actively involved as a principal broker of Phipps Realty in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. And I probably didn't pronounce that exactly right, did I, Ron?
That's okay. East Greenwich, but it's good.
Yeah, that's that northern. We don't talk that way down here.
I know. You guys have an accent, I think.
A few of his accomplishments include past president of the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, past recipient of Rhode Island's Realtor of the Year. In 2006, Ron was the presidential liaison for housing and diversity, and he was also involved in Operation Home Delivery, a partnership between NAR and Habitat International that helped build 54 homes in the Gulf region for Hurricane Katrina victims. Obviously, Ron is active in his community. He was one of 10 finalists in the NAR Good Neighbor Awards in 2001 for his volunteer work with the DARE Bike Safety Program. And he has completed the 2000 Florida Ironman, the 2000 Boston Marathon, and 14 Save the Bay swims. Ron is a certified CIPS instructor, a global speaker and presenter, and a spokesperson trainer. He has worked for state and local associations across the country. He's been with us here in South Carolina many, many times and has helped develop leaders, true, caring, passionate leaders for our organization and many others. Ron will be answering questions today. I'll be monitoring the chat. If you're familiar with Zoom, which most of us by now are very familiar, please enter your questions in chat. And for those of you that are watching us on Facebook, I'll be monitoring the Facebook comments as well. So please submit your questions, and we'll be taking a couple of breaks during the presentation to try to answer those if you have any. So please help me give a warm South Carolina Realtor welcome to Ron. Ron, welcome.
Nick, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be with my brothers and sisters in South Carolina. We are in many ways in the best of times for real estate and the worst of times. And the challenging nature of the times require we be our best selves. And what I actually want to spend the next hour sharing with you are concepts in which you can do exactly that you can be authentically who you are, but also be effectively who you are. And what my prayer and my hope is recognizing the limitations of this medium is that we still are able to converse, that we're able to share thoughts and drill down on some of the concepts I'm sharing. For my friends from Charleston, some of this stuff is going to sound very familiar. You heard from me a little bit recently, and I'm going to basically elaborate on what we have going on here. The other footnote is that I've got about 30 slides here. I'm somebody, when I teach, I like to tell people and share, look at, here's where I get the images, here's how I do it. For me, for instructing, and for me, for inspiration, photographs and visual images are really, really powerful. So if you look behind me, that is a place called Old Buttonwoods, which is in Greenwich Bay, in Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island. And it's where I live. I live on that peninsula, that spit of land that is really, really unusual. And just a footnote, Rhode Island shouldn't be a state, but don't tell Rhode Islanders that. It's all of 1,000 square miles. So you could fit it into several parts of South Carolina with lots of room to spare. But the balance of the images I'm using on here are from a site called Unsplash. So if you see images and want to pull them down, etc., it's public source, so you'll be able to do some really cool things with it. My opening question is the question that we really want to answer as leaders, and that is, how do we lead our brothers, our sister realtors into the future? And how do we do that thinking absolutely beyond ourselves? And most importantly, what is the role of the South Carolina Association of Realtors? What is the role of realtors in the professional journey of our membership and in the professional pursuit of private property rights? Those are very high thought questions. And what our job and our role is to bring those to the forefront of our thoughts and then answer them not just in poetry and prose and beautiful words, but to translate that aspiration into measurable outcomes. And it's this latter part that is really, really hard. You'll see consistently that what I am looking to have you do is actually measure your success. If something is a priority, my challenge for you is, well, okay, if it's a priority, what does that mean in terms of a tangible and outcome? And if you can focus on that, you're going to have a really amazing time. As a distraction, I'm not sure why my left arm is coming in and out of image. The picture should be doing a better job of giving you my shoulder, but for whatever reason, so I apologize for that distraction. But we'll go on and start with some leadership truths. And the leadership truths I really think are important in real estate because there's a lot of stuff we take for granted that we don't sufficiently acknowledge. And one of the biggest things that I don't think we sufficiently acknowledge is where we have come from, where we are, and where we're trying to go. And as we do that going forward, I think you're going to find some really, really amazing information about the progress of our association. So the first things is kind of the preface to the entire conversation is we have, as realtors, have built what we know as organized real estate. So all of the elements that we take for granted in real estate are the direct result of our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and their collaborators over the last 120 years in what we call organized real estate. There's a whole bunch going on about multiple listing service and whether it's still relevant, etc. And I would pause on that to say it was created in the late 1890s, and it has sustained itself for more than 125 years. By any definition, that is successful. But I would like to remind you its original purpose. The original purpose of a multiple listing is a broker-to-broker network for collaboration and cooperation, for collaboration and compensation. Nothing more and nothing less. Now, we built it into a lot of things, but it is one of the most valuable tools that we have as practitioners because it allows us to work with buyers and sellers with incredible information and provide them with accurate, comprehensive, and complete information on individual properties, trends, and also each other. The second thing that I spend a fair amount of time celebrating is the Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics is over 100 years old. The fact of the matter is the Code of Ethics is absolutely brilliant for one unusual thing. Most codes of ethics are aspirational. They talk about, doing right by consumers or doing right by each other. As a practical matter, the Code of Ethics is so unique because it speaks directly to behavior, how we take care of, how we professionally engage customers, clients, and each other. That standard is a very valuable standard that I think as an industry, we do a lousy job of messaging, articulating, and celebrating. I would ask you that when you're doing marketing presentations, whether it's in the commercial level or whether it's in the residential level, are you including the Code of Ethics in your information package with your customers and clients? I will tell you that the vast majority of practitioners in the United States absolutely do not do that. But you're going to differentiate yourself in a powerful way if you do exactly that. The other thing that we really need to take credit for is we have worked closely with the appraisal industry, and appraisers are part of our family. And whether it's the Appraisal Foundation, the Appraisal Institute, Fannie, Freddie, whatever, FHA, all of them have converged to create standards in which appraisals are an disciplined, objective analysis of real value. Now, that does not mean that appraisers always come in at value and I'm always happy with the appraisal. I got it. But the standards by which that process is engaged is a result of what we have worked on and insisted on over 100 years. I smile at the fact we take comparative market analysis for granted. I was with my son this morning on a presentation, and the seller was saying, no, I really, really want 650. And Matthew's comment is, you can want what you want. And maybe you might find one buyer that might be willing to pay more than fair market value. But the market says 600 is real value. And if you really want to be effective in this space, 600 should be the list number. The fact of the matter is our market analysis is really comprehensive, it's complete, it's disciplined, and it informs the decision makers, whether it's buyers or sellers. This is particularly exciting to us as we move forward. Transparent markets. I remember a lot of my international travel in 2011. I was struck by the fact that I always had a hard time asking what the list price was of a given property. If you talk to one broker, it was 250,000 US dollars. If you talk to another, it was 300. If you talk to a third, it was 350. And I always felt they were determining the value on what they thought my ability to pay was, which is a scary thought. The value is the value, right? The other thing that we take profound, assumptive, dynamic for is the role and the impact of title insurance. Title insurance is one of the most brilliant tools in our industry because it moves the responsibility of making sure that the history of ownership doesn't have any defects that we as practitioners would be held responsible for. And I want you to think about the fact that title insurance does not exist in the majority of countries around the planet. And one of the reasons why international money comes so exuberantly to the United States is because we protect private property rights, and we have this wonderful tool called title insurance. And that brings me to the final piece that we really have been the disruptor on that we built, and that is we have recorded, searchable, public-facing records. I remember being in Buenos Aires in which they told me, well, we've got to search these 6 or 7 registries to see if the property is recorded at any one of them. And I go, no, I'm confused. Wouldn't there be a single registry for a given geographic area? And they said, no, that's just not the custom. That's not the way they do it. Oh, and by the way, they don't have title insurance either. All of these things we take for granted, but it makes our job much easier because we don't have to worry about the fundamentals. Our role is to bring value to customers and clients, to bring them to the consumers, and we can do that with the architecture that we have. The second thing that I really want to share is, since I've been involved in leadership, there's always this discussion about how we're going to be disintermediated, how at risk we are, etc. And I smile at that because I actually believe that our value right now is more apparent than it has been in a long time. And I actually believe that we've been the disruptors. The stuff I just described to you were all radical ideas that we brought to consumers. Now, have there been huge changes in the industry? Yes. If you think about the nature of the industry, we started out from the 1880s till 1973 as a broker-centric model. From 73 to 2000, it was agent-centric. From 2000 to 2011, it was consumer-centric. In 2000, you remember, we gave consumers all of the listing data. And then in 2011, there's something really interesting that happened, and that is there was a convergence of big data into the behavioral analytics of what consumers are doing. So 2011 to 2020, 2019 has clearly been the era of big data. Right now, we're making the transition to artificial intelligence. And the fact that Amazon right now knows more about what I'm going to do than we do about our customers or clients, or frankly, ourselves. That dynamic is really going to be stuff that we are going to be the leaders of engaging. And yes, there are large companies that aggregate information, etc. But at the end of the day, the value that we genuinely bring to consumers is real, measurable, and sustainable. Where we are weak is at our messaging the value we bring to consumers. But as long as we bring value to consumers, there's a place for us. Are you with me? This particular point to me is really, really important because I'm not worried about us being disintermediated or being economic dinosaurs. Just not. What I'm concerned about is our ability to sufficiently and accurately and completely articulate our real value to consumers. If we do that well, there's always a place for it. Oh, by the way, you as leaders, it's one of your most important charges. You need to teach our members how to better articulate their value, how to message our value as an industry. If you do that, you'll be a hero. I've been talking a lot about iBuyers, and I smile because at the end of the day, when we look at iBuyers and then apply it to the leadership that you have in South Carolina, it's been our heritage as an association to be amazing in that we've been innovative, we've been inspirational, and we've been imaginative. So your charge and what this next year should be about is taking the present challenges and using them as the springboard for creative, collaborative, and bold response. If you do that, then you're going to be an author. You're going to be an architect of the future. And that is particularly exciting. Let's see if I can get back here. So, our topic today in the first section is authentic leadership for maximum impact. I'm going to share some ingredients and some recipes. My first one, and I really believe this is one that we underestimate the value of. The fact of the matter is the best leaders are passionate. That doesn't mean they're crazy. That doesn't mean they're unhinged and theatrical. It means that they are strong in their convictions and they are passionate in their commitment to serving the members and the organization. They lead boldly with their hearts. If you don't have passion, if it's strictly an exercise in mechanical process, then you don't have as much of an opportunity to do the bold reaches. You just don't have it. And the fact of the matter is this is a time in which we need creative, bold, strong, committed leaders. Now, there's an important tempering of passion. Passion requires that you lead with your heart, but effective leadership requires that passionate leaders execute with their minds. And what that means is you got to balance this passion with a strategy that is measured, disciplined, and effective. Use the ability you have to problem solve to take you where passion is going to empower you. Does that make sense? It's a really important dynamic. You can't have one without the other and be effective, but you can't rely exclusively on either. And ultimately, the measure has to be balanced. There needs to be an equilibrium. If you do that, you will do amazing things. So when you've got somebody in your group who's new, who's really enthusiastic, etc., don't frustrate that passion. Give that passion and that purpose and that focus a lane, a safe lane to accelerate, because it will serve the organization really, really well. The second one is authenticity, and this one took me forever to figure out, guys. Nick told you that I've been involved in real estate for more than 42 years, and part of my challenge is I'm a third-generation realtor in a fourth-generation realtor family. And when I first started in the business, I was so committed to impressing my grandfather, who had been a realtor, my mother, who had been a realtor, my father, who was a realtor, to be what they would define as the best. And that was really hard because their definition was much more disciplined in the concept of what it was to be successful and effective in the 50s and 60s, because that's when they came of age. And when I was really cutting my teeth, in fact, in the early 80s, I was trying to do the corporate approach they wanted and realized it wasn't authentically who I was. What became extremely obvious early on is I had to be true to who I was. Once I did that, I was dangerous because one, people believed me, two, they followed me, and three, they challenged me, one, to be my best self, but two, to go from good to better, best, and on very rare moments, great. This is a long way of saying that I want you to figure out your why. What's your story? Why are you doing this? But authentic leaders will own the day. Somehow we get trapped that we think, okay, everything we do has to be flawless. And whether we're giving a talk in front of a group of realtors, or we're doing an interview, or we're writing about the code of ethics, etc., that it has to be flawless. It can't have any uncomfortable pauses or any typos or any mistakes. It just has to be flawless. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Authentic, believable people will command the respect and trust of the people they're leading, much more so than the person that delivers a flawless, perfect package. So it's a nice way of saying, go out beyond your comfort zone. If you fall on your face, get up and keep going. But remember that people relate to authentic much more than perfect. They just do. Now, I've spent a whole bunch of time on this one, and I need to tell you that the reason that I was a realtor for so long is, one, I'm a third generation, but secondly, my wife's family is first generation, and in order to date her and not have to face her father across the sofa for the first 5 dates, we ended up both enrolling in a real estate course so I could see her 3 times a week and not have dad watching me, which was a good strategy, right? So she became a realtor. By the way, you should know that my wife is smarter than I am. I married way up. She did better on the real estate pre-licensing course. Her score was perfect. Mine was great, but hers was perfect. And her score, she took the exam the first time and got a perfect score. I took a passing test. So let's just acknowledge that I married way up. She always gets a charge out of the fact that I talk about active listening being such an important skill for leaders, because she said, it'd be nice if you were as brilliant at it at home as you are in your teaching. And what I'm going to say to you is, I'm better teaching it than I am executing it. But great leaders listen, they question, they measure, they evaluate situations. It's called discernment. Discernment is the word. But discernment requires data, which means before you can move to fix or solve, you got to have enough information on hand. And I urge you to be disciplined about seeking that information. So much of what we do in leadership is anecdotal. We get a good idea without any basis in fact, and we say, shoot, let's do this. Okay. We go ahead and do it, and then either no one comes, or the impact wasn't what we thought, or frankly, it was just an ill-conceived and poorly executed concept. Part of the discipline of being an effective leader is listening to what the members want, being engaged with them in terms of feedback and focus, but also being willing to balance their agendas with what they may not know. Nick and I were just talking about some Greek food, and there's some incredible Greek food that I have yet to discover. The fact of the matter is, sometime in leadership, it's the equivalent. You're going to be asked to introduce and serve a program, a concept, a strategy that our members have never tried before and have no knowledge of. Part of that dynamic is listening to them before you introduce this thing they have never tried before. If you do that and they know that you hear them, you're going to be in a much better position to go ahead and step up and say, here's what you need to know. I think one of the gifts of the pandemic is that we now have a much better idea of what we care about. We also know that money and things are replaceable, time is not. And if there's something you want to do, you need to do it. You need to do it now. What that means in leadership is you may not waste your members' time. If you're asking for them to participate in something, there needs to be a business purpose or a fun reason to do it. But don't ask them to do something that's foolish. If your bylaws require 12 meetings a year, but you only have 4 meetings worth of work, fix the bylaws. Also, start on time and finish on time. Now, I will tell you, if you want to be a little tardy at the beginning of the meeting, you can do that. But the back end requires that you be disciplined. If your meeting's supposed to be from 8:30 to 10:30, you can't say at 10:15, oh, we didn't get everything done on the agenda. I need another half hour. You as a leader must be disciplined about finishing the meeting at 10:30. And if you realize at 10 o'clock you're behind, you talk to the group and say, okay, we have a hard stop at 10:30. What on the agenda do we need to get to and resolve today, and what can we postpone? It is critical. Ingredient number 4, respective time, is a must. The other one that I think is a particular challenge for a lot of us in real estate, and particularly in leadership, is we forget this crazy thing called humility. We're in a society in which we celebrate all of our achievements, but when you're in leadership, it is absolutely not about you. It is about the members. And if as soon as you make it about you and about your year, then the shadow of impact you leave behind will be diminished. And simply as the sun sets on your leadership year, there will be nothing left behind. You will be absolutely invisible in the darkness. If, on the other hand, you empower the organization and people to be bold, to be strong, then you've set in motion the ability to really have an impact. One other secret. You will be more influential when you don't have the title. When you are a past president, you have more of an ability to influence process than when you're carrying the torch or the flag. Oh, by the way, as president, you're the flag holder. It's not about you. So don't waste the time on that. Ingredient 6 is about owning failure. I was just on a call with our team this morning, and I was asked, okay, what failures have you made? And I started laughing, and I said, wow, I have made more significant failures than most people you'll meet, but I've learned from them. I like the quote that success has many parents, but failure is an orphan. I think that's fitting. But here's the unfair dynamic. If you do something great as an organization, you as the president get to celebrate that and congratulate the team. It's not about you. Where it becomes unfair and uneven is if something goes wrong and things fall apart, it is the president's fault. And I know that doesn't seem like it's a balance of the scale of leadership, but it's the way it works. The best leaders understand that. If it goes wrong, blame me. I'm the chair. I'm the president. And then we can move to fix. But you got to get through that part. A president who blames everybody else, particularly on the state association or local association, and doesn't step up, makes it harder to get to fix. Get to fix. Oh, by the way, though, you're going to get credited for saying, gee, Ron's a stand-up guy. He made a bad decision, but he stood by it, etc. Okay, it's strange. And by the way, you can make big mistakes and still be successful in leadership. In 2000, I was president of the Rhode Island Association of Realtors. We had a wholly owned subsidiary, the MLS. We switched from one vendor to another on December 31st. January 1, we opened up this new beautiful opening page. The problem was when you hit any key, nothing happened. It literally took us 10 weeks to get a multiple listing system up and running in Rhode Island in 2000 under my watch. Totally my fault. And by the way, we can spend a lot of time talking about screw ups. I'm not going to waste your time on it, but I was able to go on and be a regional vice president, be involved in leadership, and be NAR president, having made that big of a mistake. And yes, it was that big. Which brings me to a pause. Before I get to recipes, let me check with Nick. Nick, do I have any questions or comments I need to weigh in on? I'm probably going a little longer than I should right now. I'm probably 90 seconds behind where I should be.
No, Ron, we don't have any questions, but we did get one comment that said, I don't think that anyone would ever question that our wives are smarter than us. It's a given. So
I don't know who said that, but he should
stating
share
the
that
obvious
with his wife.
No,
All
go
right.
ahead, Ron.
Super. So I've given you ingredients. Now let's talk about recipes. When you're involved in leadership, I want you to surround yourself with the best and the brightest. Bring the people that are really on not just the cutting edge, but the bleeding edge of change in the industry. Bring them to the table. You're going to find out so many of the things that we could do, we're not doing, not because they're expensive, not because they're difficult. We just don't know about them. To curate bold ideas, you've got to go back and get that ingredient of active listening. You got to hear better. But one of the things that I would say to you is there is an opportunity to bring people who are not involved in the industry directly to the table to give you advice on what we're doing and what we can do. In my humble opinion, one of the biggest challenges for the National Association of Realtors on all three levels, on the national level, the state level, and the local level, is we have incredible capacity and we utilize such a small portion of it. And it sort of strikes me about, how much you remember. We use 20% of our brain. I think that at NAR, it's correlative. We have reach and capacity that we simply don't engage and we don't think to engage. The other footnote, I told you to pick the best and brightest. When I was NAR president in 11, we were in the middle of the Great Recession and my timing sucked. I picked a bad time to be NAR president. That said, what I was really good at is picking really talented people. So on the leadership team at NAR, there's 7 positions. There's the immediate past president, the vice president, the treasurer, and then 2 vice presidents that the president appoints. The 2 vice presidents that I appointed were Elizabeth Mendenhall and Vince Malta. Now, people said I was an incredible president that year, and that was very kind of them to say. The fact of the matter is I chose incredible people that served the organization really, really well. And I made it a point to identify other people that had bold and strong and forward-thinking ideas. This industry is so fiercely competitive. And these associations have done really, really well because we've harnessed that competitiveness and we've been collaborative and cooperative to move the entire industry forward. That is really what is in front of us today. This pandemic has changed how we view the world. I was listening to someone the other day who was saying, the pandemic is very much like a life quake, the equivalent of an earthquake, but everybody's lives are being shaken and challenged. The challenge with the life quake is it impacts people differently. Some people it impacts in a really, really strong and derogatory and challenging way. In others, it is not as big of an inconvenience, and they've been able to thrive and accelerate and really adapt well to the challenge. But all of us are enduring this life quake. I urge you to step out of yourselves and put yourselves in your members' shoes. Go back to that active listening ingredient and then say, okay, if time, logistics, and money or resources were not a challenge, what could we do with this association? Nick mentioned Katrina. And the project we did with Habitat, I remember, was a real battle on the leadership team level. And the problem was that it was going to be 52 houses. Each of the houses cost $80,000. So the proposal was going to be a $4 million endeavor. And I remember getting to the leadership team, and three people, the treasurer particularly, but three people of the 7 votes I needed, were really adamant that this wasn't part of our mission, that only 52 houses would have a token impact on the 170,000 people who lost their homes, and we shouldn't do it. And the vote was 4-3, and we persuaded them to do it, and we did it. I remember bringing the 3 people who voted no to the dedication in New Orleans to a woman with 2 kids on the front step thanking us for how we had forever changed the course of hers and her children's lives. Guys, there are times at which we simply need to do the right thing, and the right thing isn't part of the strat plan, and it requires reach. It requires we move out of our comfort zone, but we can do incredible things. This piece is really important. Those associations that thrive are associations that focus on their member success. They focus on realtor success both as success for brokerage, as success for an industry, and as success for realtors. Now, I will tell you measurement is important, and I caution you not to use dollar volume in unit sales as a criteria of success. I think that is a measurement you look at, but I also think you want to really analyze and say, okay, what are the things that make our members satisfied, and what do they do that validates and reinforces their life purpose? It is not being, try again, it is not always being the number one agent. And one other parenthetical, we talked about messaging. This year has been the most bizarre year for messaging I've ever seen. Everybody in my market area is a number one realtor. It's just really curious to me as to what they're number one at. There was a number one realtor who was the best cheerleader in high school, and there's another one who talked about dollar volume, and there's another one who talked about unit. There's another one who talked about shortness on market for market time, etc. The consumers, I think, will look at all of that and smile. What they're going to care about is, how do you treasure me? Not what have you done, but what can you do for me? And when we message that better, we're going to do a really, really good job. About 10 years ago, my mom was looking, and we were celebrating our dollar volume as a company. And she said, well, when did you start doing that? And I said, we started doing it a couple of years ago. And she said, well, what's the reaction to that been? And I said, well, within the industry, people pay attention. She said, that wasn't my question. I said, okay. She said, I'm not sure you want to commoditize all of the families that we work with. When my mom started the company, the motto of the company, which it is till this day, is let our family take care of yours. She said, by you putting in your dollar volume and putting your unit sales, you've commoditized our lifeblood. Give them more respect. So we talk about the number of families we've taken care of. I urge you to focus on the realtor's success as a cardinal value as the association, because it's going to impact the association well, and is going to give you a future. Second, recipe 3, I actually like this piece because I think that in leadership, we got to understand experience is the only teacher. Nobody is born a leader. You don't come out being a great leader. The fact of the matter is, a lot of leaders are introverts that have learned leadership skills. I'm a true introvert. I love being alone in the mountains. My wife is a true extrovert. And in fact, what's really ironic is both Vince Malta and Elizabeth Mendenhall are also introverts. We like quiet. We draw our energy apart from people. My wife, who's a true extrovert, she draws her energy from people. The fact of the matter is, personality profile doesn't impact your ability to be an effective leader. The practical matter is that when you get the skill sets, get the feedback, get the mentoring, you'll be shocked at how straightforward being an effective leader is. It goes back to being authentic, being direct, not running away from responsibility, and being honest when you're asked the hard question. Say, look at, when we screwed up in January of 2000 on the MLS, said we didn't think we needed to run a parallel system. We made a grave mistake, totally on us, okay? We were switching vendors and there wasn't an affordable way to do it, but an an expensive way to do it would have been better than the outcome we had. I am the product of a team of mentors. And I still go to them and say, look, how should I do this? Or what do you recommend? What's really interesting is most people ask people for help. They ask to be mentored, say, gee, what can I do? How should I do this, etc. In fact, Nick made reference to the fact that he and I have shared strategies along the way saying, how might we do this better? And how will this be received by your members? And is there a better way to communicate it? That comes from a place of respect. Obviously, you ask the people that you respect for advice. And candidly, what really intrigues me is that most people don't follow up with the mentors to report back how they did. They just don't bother to let the mentor know whether it worked or not. The best students will report back victories and failures. But what's really exciting is when it doesn't work out and you report back to the mentor. And I had a really great mentor in New England named Angie Kopka. She just passed at 101. And she's from New Hampshire. She was all of 4'9". She was a force of nature. But when I went back to her and said, look, I tried to do what you tell me to do. Here's what I did. Did I get it right? And she said, you did what I recommended. I said, well, it didn't work. And here's what happened. What you will find is if you circle back with people, you're going to be shocked at how they're going to become an advocate for you for the long haul, not for the immediate problem. And that's the kind of mentoring you want. Oh, and by the way, you want to encourage your mentors to be honest with you. If you're not willing to take the direct criticism, you're foolish, because mentors can prepare you and protect you from stupid mistakes. One other footnote. Those of you that are really effective in collaborating with staff will do incredible things, and staff will protect you from yourself. But if you're an arrogant son of a gun, staff is going to watch you fall, and they're not going to step in to try and catch you or keep you from tripping. They're going to let you do your thing because, frankly, you're not going to take the advice anyway. They are your best advocates, and when you collaborate well with staff, they will protect you, and it will be amazing what you guys can collectively accomplish. It will be amazing. The recipe timeline I just wanted to talk to you about. Your most important role as a leader today is to identify, train, mentor, and support your successors. 2 footnotes on this. You don't get to pick them. I'm not asking you to pick the next president. What I'm saying is identify potential people that would be qualified and defer to the wisdom of the directors to determine whether they're worthy to go forward or not. You don't have to like the people you're picking, that you're mentoring, that you're supporting. Your job is simply to identify them and create the opportunities for them to advance. If you do that well, you're going to be shocked at the amount of influence you have going forward, 1. And 2, you've set the stage where once you leave, there's continuity, there's support, and there'll be organizational depth to continue on the journey we have. I've said it consistently. I'll say it again. Pick the best people for your team. But here's a challenge. There's a leadership timeline, and it goes something like this. You start by volunteering. You follow, you learn, you collaborate, you lead, and then the hardest thing to do when you're president is get out of the way. So there's going to be this crazy transition that's going to happen between Tyler and Owen. And the hard thing for Tyler to do is going to be let go. It's just, he's the current president. Owen's going to be gentle in that transition. That's how they are wired. But it's really important when you're the past that you find another opportunity to share your talent. It's there, but you just got to find it. You got to figure it out. Got that one? That's a harder one, guys, particularly when you really think you're doing good work. The other footnote, there are two phrases that you want to pay attention to in leadership. First and foremost is don't ask people to be on committees. Tell them you need their help. Okay? Say, look, I need your help for this project. Here's what the project is. Can you participate, etc. If you ask somebody if they want to be on a committee for the next 5 years, they're going to look at you and go, you know what? I actually value my time, and there are other things that I probably could make better use of my time doing. If, on the other hand, you say, look, I need your help for this project. It'll meet 4 times, of course, next year. Here's the time commitment. Here's what I'm looking for you for. You will be amazed at how well it works. But the piece that you must do is you have to express gratitude. When someone does something, simply thank them. Now, I know a lot of us think that a text and an email is a sufficient thank you. It's okay. I will tell you that effective thank yous are cards, old school mail. Now, I know the mail will take longer for them to get there. I got it. But I did this crazy thing where each year when I was in leadership at NAR, I had them print out 2,500 cards each year. And my goal was to use up all of the cards. And I actually printed up a second set in 2011. People remember, and I had my name on the top because my handwriting is terrible, guys. I just never learned to write well. But my name was on the top. It said thank you, and it had the Realtor R on the bottom. They knew that it was from me, and they knew it was a thank you. Okay, what it said didn't matter much. And that kind of brings me to one other important piece. When you're in leadership, and this speaks back to the authentic versus perfect, remember that people will not always remember what you said. They probably won't even remember how you said it. But where you're going to have the impact, if they remember it at all, they're going to remember how you made them feel. They're going to remember how you made them feel. Now, if they don't remember anything, then you wasted their time and you weren't an effective leader. But if you made them feel empowered and purposed in the event, you're going to be amazing. You're going to have an ability to really, really move people quickly and effectively. One other footnote about momentum. Leadership requires this crazy thing, and think of it very much as a distance race. To get to the end of a marathon, you have to literally take each step at a time. You got to check off the miles one at a time. Organizationally, you have to do the same thing. You've got to show a little bit of momentum to create more momentum so that you beget success. But people aren't going to be drawn to your race and your journey if there's no progress. Celebrate progress even if it's minor. Had an interesting conversation earlier this week about inclusion. And a lot of people think that inclusion is something we should do because it's the right thing to do. And I'm going to make a more bold statement. Inclusion is critical if you want to be successful. You're going to have a superior outcome if you include different people in the discourse, the deliberation, because you create the buy-in. They will participate. And the more diverse and different the group of people you bring together, the more superior the outcome is going to be. Now, sometimes there are people that they're going to make you uncomfortable because they're going to just carve through it. And there may be an edge in their delivery. You've got to put your ego aside and be open to that discourse and not temper it and not frustrate it. Now, there's a footnote. There is never an excuse within the realtor family to be ugly. That's not acceptable. But there is a legitimate place for hard discussions, and that's at our table. And we have to be ready for that. We have to be ready for that. I urge you to use this opportunity, to use the event of the pandemic to do that outreach, to do that stretch. One other footnote. Simply being welcoming isn't sufficient for inclusion. To say, well, everybody's welcome, okay. If you're not measuring by participation at the table, you're falling short. Repeat. Being welcoming, saying we've created the environment for people to come, great. But I want you to measure the level of diverse participation in leadership, in your deliberative bodies, and frankly, in your membership and how it correlates with the communities that we as realtors work in. That brings me to one other footnote. There's an attitude among a lot of us, well, I didn't mean much by it and I didn't intend to hurt anybody. And the fact that my intent wasn't malicious should be sufficient to excuse it. That doesn't work anymore, guys. impact, how people perceive what you're saying and what you do, it matters. And the fact that you didn't mean anything by it was not a sufficient apology or excuse anymore. This is really, really loaded. And I want you to think that, one, don't say something before you've thought it through, because you can't unring the bell. I was watching somebody recently on Facebook who was in the middle of a ugly, ugly breakup. And the person I know wrote on Facebook to his soon-to-be ex-wife, "I never loved you." I was so incensed with them, saying, even if that's true, that is so cruel and so heartless. So I really didn't mean it to be as mean as I said, yeah, but you can't unring the bell. You can't say I didn't mean it, because the fact of the matter is you printed it. It's part of your permanent record. Please, please, please think about things before you say them. And if that means your cadence and your delivery is more paused, terrific. I will be patient for superior messaging rather than potentially offensive messaging. Please be careful on this score. This one's fitting after we talked about inclusivity and equity, because at the end of the day, I want you to measure your effectiveness. I'd like you to survey your members for their level of satisfaction. The other thing is you want to have striations in your surveying and your focus groups. I was involved in a strategic plan for, it was the, Hudson Gateway. And they were really concerned that roughly 50% of members on the residential side did no transactions. They said, well, how satisfied are they going to be with our membership and the services we provide? They were one of the most enthusiastic groups of the whole striation, each category of membership. So what I'm encouraging you to do is measure effectiveness, reach out. Part of active listening is focus groups and surveys, but it's also hard measurement, and show your progress over time. Remind you, a little momentum creates serious progress. It works. The maximum impact piece, by the way, that's in New York. That's a pretty cool slide. First thing I want you to think about is value. The second piece is messaging, and the third is participation. It is critical that you provide your members a superior product, and you do it conveniently. That's both simple and difficult. Commit the association to the realtor, sales associate, and broker success. And if you keep the keystone of success on the top, then you're going to be delivering a really meaningful value. And when you do your evaluation of the services you provide, a small group of wow, a group that says, look, this is incredible, that's exuberant, is better than everybody saying ho-hum. On the messaging, I've said to you early, and I really have been frustrated lately. I think that we have been atrociously anemic in our messaging on all three levels. But I want you to recognize and understand the distinction between providing value and having a reservoir of value and messaging it. We have to do a better job of sharing with our members what we have, what we can do, and what our deliverables are. And we're not doing that well. And this is a real challenge for us going forward. If you want your members to continue to pay the dues and value the association, you have to communicate what it is they're getting for that membership. Participation. What is your level of member engagement? What's really important on this particular piece, what's critical, is that you evaluate it. Now, I talked about the wow factor. If, for conversation's sake, only 5% of your members participate in a specific program, but the program has purpose, it's within the focus of the strategic plan, and people are exuberant about it, that's a win. To have 50% or 60% of your members saying, yeah, this is okay, with no enthusiasm, etc., that's not a win. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do is don't measure with a coarse yardstick to say, okay, total membership, member of participation, this is the evaluation. Remember the commitment of the participants you have. How much value are they receiving from this program? That is going to be more informing to your decision as to what you do and how you move forward. Final question. Does it forward the purpose of the organization or not? And those certain things, we've done them for 50 years and no one participates anymore, so we've always done it. That's not a good enough reason. What is the reason we're doing it, and does it have an impact? It brings me to the important piece. We've talked about our who, our what, and our how, but you need to know the why. And specifically, you need to know the members' why. In other words, what is their story? What motivates them? What are they looking for in life? What are they looking for professionally? What are they looking for from their company and their business affiliations and participation? And what are they looking for from the association? You won't know unless you ask. Oh, and by the way, even when you ask, there are things that you can provide that they don't even need, they don't even know you have, much less may not even know that they want. I'm bringing it to my close. These are my why. I am blessed with emotional abundance. I will tell you that right now as we're speaking, my second son, his wife, and 2 kids are living with us. It has been interesting. They came when she had a baby in February. They're from Brooklyn, and they've stayed. They're expected to be here until October, maybe. And our house is loud. But the fact of the matter is, I live in great emotional abundance, which brings me to one really important piece for you in leadership. And I think this is a really good advice in the larger sense. I want to make certain that your family gets the best of you, not what's left of you after everything else. And that's a real challenge, particularly in real estate, because even unrelated to what we do in our core business of commercial or residential real estate, working with buyers or sellers or investors, there's so much required and such a commitment that we need to make certain that we're disciplined in the balance and that we give our families what is special about us, what is unique about us, not the exhausted professional who has nothing left at the end of the day or the weekend when we show up as a rag doll at the end of the day on the front porch. With that, I am like so on point for time. I have 2:59. So let me close with a giant thank you. I want you to know how much I genuinely appreciate the opportunity to do this. I really believe our role as past leaders is to speak and train and empower the future leaders, because you really are going to be determinant of our future. And with that, Nick, I am ready for any questions. And if there's anything I missed, I'm all ears.
No, Ron, thank you. That was, as always, that was incredible. When we first scheduled this, we did not know that NAR was going to be doing their virtual leadership summit, this week. And in my mind, this is, your remarks today are a perfect bookend to this leadership week that we've experienced. One of the things you mentioned, mentoring, and there was something during the presentation this week that I wanted to mention that really kind of struck me. One of those kind of light bulb moments when I don't really remember which individual was addressing this issue of mentoring and leading by example. But in the chat room, a realtor, and I didn't write her name down. She was not from South Carolina, but a realtor said that it was the speaker that was talking about how can one realtor make a difference, right? It's a big world. We've got a lot of issues. How can one realtor make a difference? And this one realtor showed her example in the chat room. She said, instead of waiting for me to find the right person to or the right agent to come and ask me to be their mentor, instead of me waiting around for somebody to show up on my doorstep, I went to a pre-licensing class. I identified an individual that looked like they needed assistance. They needed that extra hand up to get into the industry and get into the business. I paid for their pre-licensing program. And
Cool.
I offered them a position with my firm, and they've become my, trainee, so to speak, my shadow. And it's almost like flipping that mentoring idea on its head. And instead of, sometimes it's almost like ego driven, right? We wait for somebody to ask us what our opinion is, as opposed to us using our skill sets to identify those in need and bring them into our industry, make them real superstars, and really identify them as part of our realtor family. I thought it was an amazing testimonial, and I probably haven't done it justice in the way I've described it, but
No, and I think there's Nick, I think there's a bigger piece, which is when you see a need or an opportunity. One of the gifts of working in this profession is we read people really, really well. It's what we do. We know when they need to make a decision, when they need help, when they need a little bit of encouragement, when they need pause. When you apply those skills in the larger life situation, it's exciting. I have the privilege of encouraging a lot of people. And there are people who haven't asked for my encouragement that I reach out for and go, I just want to help. I mean, I was trained. My grandfather was really, really tough because he would always say, to whom much is given, much is expected. To whom more is given, more is expected. To you, yet more has been given. And for him, and for me, that's a really important bar. It's a criteria that I have to be able to look in the mirror and say, look, I put the best I have and I'm trying to be my best self. But my best self is in helping sow the seeds of confidence and experience in other people. It's no longer doing the work. I don't have to do the work. But I had a situation where I was with Vince Malta in Oklahoma, and we met a young man who's a really talented speaker, Dominic Petrozelli, who is from Washington State. And for whatever reason, we just clicked. We played a game together, and our table tended to be one. And I think sometimes Vince was, I think, president-elect at the time. I think they had the president-elect win. It's kind of the way the game's played, right? Which is unfortunate because he's fiercely competitive. But Dominic went through a situation where he comes from a tough family situation. Within 6 months, his sister had been killed by her husband, etc. It was a very complicated situation. I check on him every 6 weeks, just text, whatever. I'm simply doing what I would want someone else to do for me. And I think that you're going to find the best leaders literally wear their hearts on their sleeves, but they share their life experience, not for acknowledgement, but knowing it's making a positive difference in other people. And I actually think we as an association have not figured out how vital and amazing something larger than mentoring, maybe coaching, or I don't even know the word, but there's so much there. And I agree. I think that we're missing a powerful opportunity to team up. And oh, by the way, we're dangerous as a team. It's funny. I did Ironman, and the thing you learn in Ironman is everybody takes a chance at the front. The person who's at the back of the peloton is pulled along. They're drafting. The same is true as swimming. But you got to take your time up in front where it's all energy. You got to put it all on the road, and then you fall back to the back. We organizationally don't do that. And we got to figure out how to do that, because I actually think that if we figure that out, one, we're going to be training each other, we'll be mentoring each other, but we'll do a better job of sharing the load. And one final note, I've got a new associate, and the buyer fired her this week. She was distraught. The buyer fired her because they've done 4 offers now in multiple bid situations, and the buyer didn't get it and said, look, I got to get somebody who's going to win for me. And she was totally depressed about saying, look, they're 95% financing. It's just tough in a seller's market to win. And I said, Laura, you got to remember that it's sort of like There are times in which Big Bird has diarrhea and you're holding the bucket, and stuff's going to happen. Okay. But what you do is you help Big Bird get out of the way, you clean the bucket, you take a shower, and you call the people who love you, who treasure your work, and say, I just need to be appreciated today. And guess what? They will be enthusiastic about appreciating you. So have those touchstones, those people that when you need to talk, when you just need someone to say, yeah, I understand, that they're there, because the business we work in is really, really hard. The environment we're in is really, really hard. But the way we're going to get through this is having each other's back, and on occasion, holding each other's hands, even COVID, with gloves, I guess.
Absolutely, Ron. Just like you said, 2020 started off with a lot of promise and a lot of enthusiasm. And, for a lot of our leaders, for a lot of our realtor members, it wasn't the year they wanted or anticipated.
No.
But it's the year we got. And what we've gotten out of this year is there are some really good things that have come out of this.
Right.
And as realtor leaders, what I've seen across the country, and President Owen Tyler and our leadership team here in South Carolina, they took this challenge and turned it into this huge opportunity, and connecting with our members in ways that we've never done before, in numbers that in participation rates that we've never seen before. It has been an amazing experience. And on a personal level, we've spent more time with our families. We've connected more with our children. We've gotten all of our honey-do lists done at the house.
Not quite.
But the one thing that I always stick to, we can't predict the future. Only the good Lord knows what's ahead of us.
Right.
The only thing we can control is how we respond to those challenges. Right. And I'm confident, Ron, with leaders like you and our realtors across the country, that there isn't a challenge we can't face together. Thank you.
Great.
So thank you so much for your time today.
Nick, it was my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you, South Carolina Realtors. We got a bright future, and it's ours to write and design.
Absolutely. Everyone, have a great afternoon, and we will talk to you soon. Stay safe and stay realtor strong.